Hi, welcome back or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Laura. Hi, hello, welcome. Today we are going to do a video that I saw my dear soul sister Haley do on her channel about a week ago, which was a would I repurchase them, where she had her husband pick out 10 palettes at random, and then she kind of talked about whether or not she would have repurchased them herself, like now. I thought that would be kind of fun, especially since a lot of my collection isn't actually bought by me. Haley is such a sweet friend that she sent me a lot of my palettes, as well as my husband obviously bought me some, and then I have my own that I've bought sprinkled in there as well. But rather than having someone else pick them out, I have all of my palettes listed on a Tiny Decisions wheel. So I'm going to randomly select them with you, and we're going to talk about it that way. So no rhyme or reason, I'm just going to push the button. Ooh, the Natasha Denona Green Brown. Great palette. The second one, the Colourpop Bare Necessities. I better write these down because I have the memory of a goldfish and I will forget. The next is the Sugar Pill Fun Size palette. And then the Menagerie Feral. Purple Blue, all right then. But the sixth, so we're halfway through our list. The sixth one is going to be Lunar Lavender. Seventh, the Safari. Avocado Toast. We already have that one, so we're not going to roll that one, or we're not going to pick that one. The Morphe Sour Patch Kids. And the last palette that we're going to talk about, the Astro Pink by Kaleidos. I'm going to go grab those palettes. I'm going to go let the dog out of this room, and then I will be back and we'll talk about this. So Bandit has actually decided that the door just needs to be open, but he's fine in here. So we're going to just proceed on with the video at this point. Should I go in order? We'll go in order of draw. That seems a nice way to keep it all like together, you know? So kicking it off with a very large, very reflective packaged palette. This is the Natasha Denona Green Brown palette, which I pined after for so long, and it does not look as well loved as it really truly needs to be. This guy here. Now, I think I would repurchase this if I'm being quite honest. The greens in this, especially Antique Olive up here, it's just so beautiful. I love that kind of shade, like these like minty kind of shades. Like this whole row is gorgeous. Even the shimmers over here are incredible. This, as much as it was, I definitely think her larger palette, not necessarily this large, even her mid-size palettes or her 15-pan palettes, I think those are more worth it to me than her 5-pan palettes. Those ones just aren't it. However, these ones, especially this color story, definitely speak to me a little bit more. The only thing that I will say with this, there's a lot of browns in it for it being a green brown palette, and then a lot of like the same kind of green. So I wish that it was more varieties of different greens and then a little less brown. Like if they took off at least one of those and kind of condensed that into a 15-pan palette, like even like this and that bottom, or like some formulation of just having 15 rather than the 28 pans, I think that would have been a little bit more successful in my opinion. But I like this palette. I could do without the silver in this. I just don't feel like a silver or grays really have business in a green-brown palette. I think that was kind of a letdown in this, and I just wish that, I think the online pictures are a little bit more, make things look a little bit more special than kind of what they look like. So I don't necessarily know if I would have dished out as much money as this was. However, I would repurchase it. I would. This one at least. I would repurchase the green-brown palette. Moving to the Colourpop Bare Necessity palette. Now, this was a gift from my husband for a Valentine's Day a couple years ago. I can't quite remember. And if you are unfamiliar, this is what this palette looks like. Just a super neutral palette. Nothing super exciting about it. I will say, there's a couple, the shimmers in this are incredible. They have that super like buttery, reflective kind of feel to them. However, I wouldn't repurchase this, and it's for a couple reasons. One, I just don't really buy from Colourpop at all anymore. I just don't. They put out too much, and it's just like too much. It's just too much. So I don't buy from them anymore. Two, I have neutrals. I have so many neutrals. I didn't need this. However, I have it. And then the last reason why is just it's so large. Like 30 shades, is it? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Yeah, 30 shades in this palette is just, I know it's only 2 more than the Natasha Denona one. I will say the Natasha Denona palettes, the 28 pans are just too big in general. But adding 2 more and making it an even 30, like that's just too much. Too many neutral, same shadows. So I wouldn't repurchase this one. And that's fine. It's fine. There's no real rhyme or reason. It's just a lot of shades that have matte with shimmer, a lot of shades that have repeats on. I will say the formula is beautiful on it. However, just knowing kind of the things that I know now and knowing them about Colourpop makes me not want to buy from them. So there's that. Then we can talk about the Sugar Pill Fun Size palette. And I remember exactly when I bought this. I was supposed to go on a trip to go visit my parents in Florida. I think it was in 2019. It was like before the pandemic kind of thing. So it's 2019. They canceled because of some hurricanes that didn't even end up showing, but I did a little retail therapy because I was so looking forward to that trip, and it got taken away from me at like the very last minute. So I purchased this guy, and I really have not given this enough love that it needs for when I purchased this, but there's some very unique shades in here that I truly, truly love and don't have in my collection, like that shade 8-bit. Even some of these greens, like the tones of them, I don't really have anywhere else. But would I repurchase it? I probably wouldn't. And it's not because of anything in particular. Like, it's more so that I don't... It's a companion palette, not necessarily like a standalone palette to me. So I need some other shades to make this work as a cohesive look for me. Whereas, like, I can create a full-blown look using this kind of palette. So granted, this is much more colorful. This is much more exciting. However, just with the collection, the size that I have it, and having the majority of these shades, I definitely didn't need this, and I probably shouldn't have bought it, but we have it. We're keeping it. I love it. I would not repurchase this. I would not repurchase this if it got lost. I mean, obviously I can't, but we're playing the rules of like, if I lost everything and if everything stocked on a shelf somewhere and I could take it, would I get it again? The answer is no for this one. Then we move to the Feral palette by Menagerie. Now, this is another one that Haley had sent me, so it's not what I repurchase, it's would I have spent the money on this. And this is such a pretty palette. It's truly so gorgeous. It's stunning. There's some very unique shades in here, like this that looks like one tone. It definitely has this crazy shift. I hope you can see it in like that reflection there. Like this bright pink and this green are incredible shimmers, but it's not that I'm not grateful. I just wouldn't have purchased this one in particular for myself. And it's only because there's other palettes that Menagerie has that I would have purchased before this. So would I repurchase this, or would I have purchased this? Probably not. However, there are other Menagerie palettes that I would have purchased in place of this, but it doesn't mean that I'm not grateful for this. It doesn't mean that I don't love it. I probably wouldn't have purchased this myself. But since Haley sent it to me, I am going to very much enjoy this. It's such a weighty palette too. Like, I didn't realize how like heavy duty and like just luxurious the Menagerie palettes felt. So I'm very impressed by the quality of the palette itself, but I don't necessarily think that I would have purchased this myself. Now, I want to grain of salt everything just because this was also noted in my 10 or 5 palettes. I don't remember the number, but the palettes with the most interesting color stories, this was definitely in there. Doesn't mean I don't, and because I'm saying I wouldn't repurchase it, doesn't mean I don't like it and don't find it interesting. It's just, would I repurchase it? And I wouldn't have purchased it, you know? Then going down to another large Natasha Denona palette, the purple blue. Now, I feel like you all know what I'm going to say with this. This I bought as a two-some with the green brown palette. This looks much more loved. This was in my project level up, so obviously it's going to look more loved just by nature of using the shades. I'm missing a shade. It's in my BYOP. Would I repurchase this? No, I wouldn't. I probably shouldn't have purchased this. I force myself to use this, and that's how I've gotten a lot of the use that I have in this, and then being in various projects, that's kind of how I've gotten the use that I have with this. Now, I will say focusing on this, and especially these purples in the project level up, made me fall in love with purple eyeshadow. However, would I have dished out the money if I could go back in time and only buy one? I definitely wouldn't have purchased this one. I would have only purchased the green brown palette. But such is life. Moving to the Lunar Lavender palette, this guy here. And Haley sent this one to me as well. There's actually quite a few gifted palettes in this array that I have. But Haley had gifted this beauty to me last year at Christmas. No. When we first moved into the house, it was January 2021. Or December 2020 when this came into my life, and it was the first article of makeup that was in this house, so it holds a very nostalgic feel to it. And then Haley sent it to me, so even more special to me. If you had asked me a year ago if I would have repurchased this, the answer would have been no, because I'm not into purples kind of thing. However, forcing myself with the purple blue palette, I 100% would repurchase this. This kind of has super unique topper shades here, which are just incredible. They are so incredible. The matte purples are also beautiful. They would kind of take the itch of like some of those matte purples that the Natasha Denona purple blue palette has. And then obviously you have like some staple deepening shades that do wear well with purples, especially since they're like more cool toned, and like this is kind of like a grayish almost to me, like a deep grayish kind of color that pair well with purple tones. So I'm surprising myself. I would definitely I would have repurchased this. If I lose this today, I could see myself repurchasing it same day or tomorrow or payday, you know? But that is that guy. We move to the last Natasha Denona palette in this selection of shadows or palettes, and that is my Natasha Denona Safari palette. And I pined after this for years, for at least 5 years before, or like whenever it launched to whenever I purchased it in 2019-ish. I pined after it. It was on sale and I bought it. It's this beauty. I bought this for half off. It was $65 or right around that price point. And I don't use this nearly as much as I should. And part of it is because I'm panning Subculture and just want to use that up. Part of it is because it's special and I hold on to it. Because I have Subculture, granted it's like if you missed my Pan That Palette updates, I'll link them. I recommend checking that out. A lot of similar shades in this palette to Subculture. But I also have the Savannah palette by C Color, and I did a comparison video on those. Again, I will link it somewhere. because, no, I would keep this one. I would or if I had to repurchase one, the C color or this one, I probably would do the C color one just because it's cheaper. But if I lost everything, would I repurchase this one? I have to be quite honest with myself. I don't think I would repurchase this. If this went missing today, I wouldn't repurchase it because I have alternatives in my collection. That hurts. Ooh. Oh man. I wouldn't repurchase that though. Now moving on to a palette again that Haley, my soul sister, sent me. The Avocado Toast palette. And this is what that beauty looks like. I gotta tell you, I would repurchase this. I love the greens. I love the fact that they have those pinks. This is super reflective, and I do apologize that it's kind of distracting. So I just love this palette so much. The formula is incredible in this. Super buttery matte, super blendable shimmers, and I love the variation in the color stories that they have. So I just really enjoy the color story of this one. I enjoy the formula of this one. I know that BH pans aren't super deep, so I could like eventually finish this off and feel like really accomplished with myself. If this flung out of my collection, got sucked into the vortex, I would definitely purchase this one again because I don't know why it took me so long to get it. Well, one, I didn't purchase it. That's why it took me so long, because I was like, no, I can dupe it. But I'm so thankful that I have just like a full palette of that in my collection that I don't have to dupe, and it's just bam, done. I would repurchase this one. Tenfold for that. All right, we only have 2 more palettes to talk about, and we're going to start with this guy here. This is the Morphe and Sour Patch Kids collection, or palette. Sour Then Sweet is the palette name, I think. It's written there. I don't know. So this is what this beauty is looking like. That guy there. Now, I wouldn't repurchase this. My husband was so sweet and bought me the Morphe Sour Patch Kids collection. I do not support Morphe. That's the first one. I don't support Morphe, so I wouldn't have gone out of my way to purchase this in the first place. I will say, the shimmers in this palette are nice from what I've used. I haven't used all of them. The mattes, Morphe just typically has matte shadows that deteriorate quickly, in my opinion. Like, they don't last very well. And I don't know if these ones are technically pigments or not. I don't know. But the pigments that Morphe does are particularly not as great to work with than their regular matte shadows. The shades that I've used, like Watermelon Craze, which was my favorite shade in the palette, if you missed that video, Grape, I've used like the Bone colors, the blue. I've used a handful of them. They always impress me when I use them. I wouldn't repurchase this. Now I will say, if I had no other rainbow palettes in my collection and this one was there, I would repurchase it just because it's like the full array of the rainbow, kind of all in one-stop shop, rather than like the Take Me Back to Brazil palette that has like overabundant amount of rainbow shades in it. This one is like a great assortment of them. So I would if I had no other rainbow palettes, but with the collection how it is, and if this is the only palette that went missing, I would not repurchase it. So another one for the no pile. So the last palette we have to talk about is the Kaleidos Futurism 3 Astro Pink palette. And this palette challenges me in a creative way because it's a color story that kind of intimidated me when I first got it. This is another one that my husband bought me, the collection of Futurism palettes, and this one is in my life because of that. I asked for them. That's why I have them all. Now, I have a couple pans in this palette, not necessarily because I love these shades. They were in my Pan Those Eyeshadows and my, I did a fantasy self project last year, and that's where that one was in, I believe. And I like this shade here. I like these 2 shades, but I can't justify a whole palette because I like these 3 shades. I will say, I like this shade now that I am like into those kinds of tones. However, when I purchased, or when I didn't purchase this, when I got this, I didn't wear those kinds of tones. It was very intimidating and hard to reach for something like that. I wouldn't repurchase this one. I just wouldn't. This shade is super pretty, but it's more of that like topper, but it's a deep base topper, so it doesn't really do much for me. This shade, though, is incredible. That is my absolute favorite shade in that palette. But yeah, again, another not so great note of ending with another I wouldn't repurchase it. I will say this, like, everything is with a grain of salt. I have all these in my collection. I really truly enjoy them and love them. Working at Ulta and then Project Panning is really just given me extra insight and opened my eyes more to the waste that the makeup and beauty industry does create. Like all the damage and like destruction that Ulta does with returned product. If it's used, like, it gets destroyed. So while a lot of these palettes I wouldn't repurchase, one, I've become so content with my collection and downsizing, but I also I'm not interested in new palettes. So it's a weird dynamic that I'm feeling right now. So maybe in a week when you ask me if I would repurchase this stack of ones that I said no to, which is the vast majority of the palettes that we talked about. So we have 7 palettes over here and 3 palettes that over here. This is I wouldn't repurchase it. If they lost them all today, I wouldn't repurchase these. And this is I would repurchase these if I lost them. Like, that is a vast difference in size, at least like just visually in the palettes. Not to mention, like, this is a lot of money of palettes that I didn't necessarily need to buy, because if I lost them, I wouldn't need them again today, you know? So even this practice is very eye-opening on how much waste I could possibly create. Like, if I didn't want these anymore and just pitched them without like seeing if anyone wanted them or donating them or anything like that, or even like stuff that, which one is the oldest in this stack? This is a pretty new stack of eyeshadow palettes, if I'm being quite honest. Like, my eyeshadow palette collection isn't super, super old, but this one's probably the oldest at like 2 or 3 years. Everything else is relatively new, within the past 3 or less years kind of thing. So how much money could I have saved and actually like spent on other things that are more important to me, like traveling or spending time with my husband, or I don't know, like spending money on my dog, like that kind of stuff, or food. Like, I love food. So I don't know. I'm going through like a weird spot with makeup, guys. I love wearing it. I love applying it. I love sharing it with you guys, but I'm like at a point where like nothing's super interesting to me anymore. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm super content with my collection. Yes, I would love to try new things, but I also don't want to spend the money on those new things. So it's a weird like limbo state that I'm in. But let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my I wouldn't repurchase. We definitely have 70% of the palettes I wouldn't repurchase. I did not expect that kind of number. Like, in something like in like a practice like this, I did not expect to have like 70% of my palettes I would be like, no, I'm good with. Whereas 30% I'm like, yes, I love these. I would repurchase them if I lost them. I just didn't expect that. And even this stack is like a much more humble, like, obviously this one isn't like very humble of an amount of money, but like these aren't very like terribly expensive. Like, BH Cosmetics is a very affordable brand. And then the Futurism series, what are they, like $20 for a palette? $30? I don't know. Maybe. So in comparison, this is a much more affordable stack than this guy. And oh no. All right, I'm going to stop while I'm ahead now. So I hope you guys are staying healthy, sane, and safe. I will catch you in the next video. And until then, stay healthy, sane, and safe. Bye.